Hi girls. So as you can see here, I have a life cycle analysis drawn up for you. So a life cycle analysis is pretty much a mind map, as you could see. It's a mind map of the different environmental impacts that it has. So during I guess, a design project or anything that you kind of create, you have to go through all these different stages, and each stage has positive and negative impacts on the environment. So if we're looking at, I guess, the use of timber in our scenario, so we know that timber is wood, and wood originally comes from trees. So we have to do this raw material extraction, okay? Which means that you actually have to chop down those trees first, which means it's deforestation. And from deforestation, a lot of those animals that live in those forests, they have a loss of habitat. Those machines that cut those trees down, it means also there's noise pollution created and also air pollution, which means that a lot of CO2 emissions are released into the atmosphere. Then you move on to social and environmental impacts. So it just means again that what are the main impacts? Well, CO2 emissions are being released. So it's bad pollution, as you can see. Bad pollution is being released through these two early stages. Once you have those trees chopped down, a lot of them are just going to be logs, right? So they're not cut into wooden blocks yet. This is what the manufacturing process is about. So during that manufacturing process, they're in a lot of big factories, and what they do is they run the logs from the trees that they cut down. They either have to treat it, it's called a rough sawing, which pretty much it means that they remove all the bark from the logs until it's just like a naked type of timber and it's got no rough edges. Then they have to season it, so meaning that they have to treat it and put special chemicals in so that it can be cut into wooden boards, as like what we see when we're in the workshop. So again, from these different factories, as you can see, bad pollution, CO2 emissions are being released. Then, once your logs have been cut and they've been treated and now they're into wooden boards, you now have to transport it. So now, for example, the school, we order the timber. So in that case, that means that those timber planks are being shipped to us. So they're either packaging and shipping and transportation, they all go hand in hand. And through that transportation, more CO2 emissions are being released and more bad pollution is happening. So that's a negative impact on the environment. Once we have the wood, right, then you move on to production of objects. So in our case, we're making the pen case now. So even just being in the workshop, girls, we're got some negative impacts on the environment. So you all know when you're marking out your pieces for your box, you know that you had a little bit of leftover wood left. And what do we do with that? We threw it in a bin, which means that we've created waste there. We've got to consider safety and energy, not just for yourself, but the energy that we use from, the lights in the workshop, the power for using the machines and tools. Noise pollution is created, just from you hammering a nail or you using the belt sander or just even turning on the extraction. And again, from all of that, CO2 emissions are being released as we're doing that. Then we move on to our final stage, which is the use phase. So once you've got a finished pen case, right, you're now using it, it's great, but let's say in a couple years' time, you're not going to be using that pen case anymore. So you're probably grown out, or you probably just don't use it anymore, and it just becomes a redundant object. So it might just be a thing that sits on your bookshelf or sits underneath your bed or something. So you either go down two ways. You either recycle your box, meaning that you can either reuse it for something else, or repurpose, which means like you could take apart your box and maybe use some elements. And maybe if you really like the design that you kept on your lid, maybe you might use those shapes and put them on something else, or you might repurpose and reuse it, or you might use the base of your box for something else and it becomes a new object for you. Or, as most of us probably do and we're guilty of, we probably just throw it in the bin, right? So that means disposal of waste. So that means that we're adding more landfill and then it just goes into the bins and the skips and more rubbish bag, and that just goes more into the landfill amount, and which means that we're going to run out of space on our earth. So I've uploaded this PDF as an image as well for you girls on the VO class page. What I want you to do is, I know that in the folio booklet it asks for a life cycle analysis for the pen case, so you can by all means use all these headings, copy it, and then maybe add some of your own pictures to it, so to help you kind of understand this process. And then with the materials research, use this as your guide so that you know, because with timber it all follows the same scenario. So this is pretty much like a scaffold for you. And because you're doing your folio booklet online, you can potentially draw your mind map or digital. So you can use different shapes, you can add in clip art pictures, up to you. But this is just a guide for you.